So 3,000 super billionaires, they owe more than 95% of the resources on this planet. Imagine that you have free energy. You would change everything. With free energy, no more oil, gas, no more dirty industries, no more, those big tankers, no more refineries, no more petrochemical industry, no more plastic, no more auto industry as we have it today, no more, pharmaceutical industry, no more additives for our food and water that poison our food and water. Everything changes.
Well, I've been looking into Tartaria, which is kind of, we're looking at, history is not what we're told, obviously, and, things have, there's been civilizations there that we haven't been told about and different technologies, and we get into a lot of the healing frequencies and all that. And the interesting thing is, it sort of started in the cities we've got now with the old buildings, but it's kind of led us back to the megalithics and to the pyramids. Like, we've been actually looking a lot at the pyramids and the Nubian pyramids. A lot of those were destroyed. We've got on old maps that they were just wiped out. Obviously, I've looked at the Chinese pyramids in South America, and then we got onto the Russians who did all these experiments with pyramids and with the angles and shapes, and they were getting all these energetic effects, like food wouldn't spoil, or seedlings would grow and all this kind of stuff. So it's very interesting that I started on my channel on a different kind of course, but it's kind of led us back to the same kind of back to the megaliths, and we're sort of looking at all that now. So
well, that's great, Cambell. I think we will have a lot to talk today. You see, my name is Dr. Sam Osmanagich, and I've been researching pyramids and megalithic sites for the last 4 decades. My PhD is about the Mayan pyramids in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Belize, but I have expanded the research to all 6 continents. And I have concluded that almost everything they teach us about the ancient history is wrong. The origin of man, civilizations, and pyramids. When it comes to pyramids, we have been programmed to think that they were built in Egypt and Mexico. And that's wrong, because they're all over the planet. And secondly, they've been telling us in the last couple of 100 years that the Egyptian pyramids were built as tombs for the pharaohs. And guess what? In Egypt, there are 155 pyramids, not 118 like non-scientific Wikipedia claims or Encyclopedia Britannica. 155. I have researched and I've seen all of them, and they're in my books. Not a single one has a mummy.
No.
Of course, the pharaohs have been buried, but in the Valley of Kings, in Thebes, in Memphis, in Abydos, in Dendera, in their, major capitals, not in the pyramids. So in the 21st century, we really need to find the scientific answers to what the pyramids were, who really built them, when they were built, and how they were built. So, after my 4 decades of research, I came to Bosnia. That was 2005. And I came to visit the local museum. But then what I saw was, everybody called it natural hill because it was covered by vegetation and soil and the forests. But I could see the perfect geometry, 4 sides, 4 triangular faces, 4 corners, the same slope from bottom to the top. So it was geometry of the pyramid, 4-sided pyramid. I took compass and showed me that those 4 sides are perfectly oriented to the cardinal points, east, west, north, and south. And that's how the pyramids were built in China. In China, 250 pyramids in the central province of Shanxi, all covered by soil and vegetation. As a matter of fact, the Chinese government started planting the pine trees back in 1967. But again, perfect geometry, perfect orientation. In Cambodia, we have beautiful Koh-Ker pyramid in northern parts of the country. Of course, Angkor Wat with the pyramidal temples are interesting, but Koh-Ker pyramid is a 7-tier, 7-step pyramid, beautiful, and most of their structures were, under the vegetation. In Indonesia, Gunung Padang, Western Java, our friend Dr. Danny Hillman discovered the pyramid in the middle of the jungle. And back in 2006, when he was allowed to work, he found organic material inside the pyramid. He dated it. It's 28,500 years old. Then pyramids, of course, in United States. Nobody tells us about those pyramids. In Cahokia National Park, in the state of Illinois, southwestern corner, 120 Cahokia mounds. But you can clearly see that they are four-sided step pyramids. And no archaeological research. When I spoke to the archaeologist there, he said, no, we cannot get the permission. Archaeology is very expensive, which is nonsense. I mean, it's the US, you know, the only superpower in the world. So then you realize that, you know, cultural establishment do not research. Why? Because they would need to change the history. Even on the small islands like Canary Islands, Tenerife, 104 pyramids. Mauritius, 7-step pyramids. And then, yeah, before, you know, we started recording it, you mentioned Nubian pyramids in northern Sudan, 224 pyramids. Obviously, the world of the past was the world of pyramids. And then you mentioned something very interesting. You mentioned also the modern pyramids that are built in Russia. Dr. Alexander Golod, he built 16 pyramids. Our friend Valery Uvarov, he built pyramids in Moscow, St. Petersburg, in Tomsk. They are building a complex of 33 pyramids. And I was the first foreigner to visit those pyramids in Siberia. Dr. Golod has done several experiments with the pyramids, concluding that they have a healing, you know, features. You know, he placed 5 tons of kitchen salt, and he had a contract with a nearby prison. So he asked warden to give prisoners salt during breakfast, lunch, and dinner. 3 months later, he came back, and then they realized that the level was reduced to 0. 6,000 prisoners, no violence whatsoever. What does that mean? It means that the energy of the pyramids affects the food in very beneficial way. Well, back in 2005, when I first came to the town of Visoko in central Bosnia and Herzegovina, you know, first year I started working as the physical person, one guy. It was one-man show with preliminary archaeological research, geological core drilling, lab analysis, and I realized that they were all anomalies. It was not a natural phenomenon. So I wrote a book. I announced the news to the world that the first European pyramids were discovered. And the following year, I established non-profit, non-government foundations for the archaeological research. And in the last 17 years, Cambell, it has become the most active archaeological site in the world. Every year, I have hundreds of volunteers. In the last 13 years, I've had volunteers from 64 countries and 6 continents, 3,750 of them. So every season, we have hundreds of volunteers. They work under our supervision, of course, our archaeologists, geologists, engineers. We teach them archaeology. They start digging with us. And we concluded that we have actually the complex of 6 pyramids in Bosnia. The Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, which is the largest on the planet, 368 meters, which we determined using the new technology called LIDAR or LIDAR technology. Bosnian Pyramid of the Moon, 190 meters. And for the comparison, the Great Pyramid of Egypt, or Cheops, or Khufu, is 147. So 2 biggest are in Bosnia: Pyramid of Dragon, Pyramid of Love, Temple of Mother Earth, the 6th pyramid. And interestingly enough, 3 major pyramids, Sun, Moon, and Dragon, they form perfect equilateral triangle. The distances between the tops, 2,180 meters, 2,180, 2,180.
180.
When we started digging, yes, when we started digging back in 2006, 1 meter under the soil, we started discovering rectangular and square blocks in several rows. We have analyzed those blocks at 7 institutes for materials: Politecnico di Torino in Italy, Geopolymer Institute in France, Institute for Geology of Czech Academy of Sciences, Slovakia, Bosnia. They all told us that that was an artificially made concrete. So the pyramid is covered in millions of tons of concrete. And they told us it was the best quality concrete ever. How do you determine that? Well, hardness. Harder the concrete, more durable, better the quality. Our concretes in 21st century are in the scale from 10 to 60 megapascals. After we've analyzed 50 samples from the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, the hardness is from 74 to 155 megapascals.
Wow.
We cannot make such a hard concrete with our technology. The next element, since I travel around the world, I realized there are several common elements. The next element is the orientation to the cardinal points, to the north especially. Well, the pyramids in China, northern direction, Cambodia, Indonesia, Egypt, north. For example, the Great Pyramid of Egypt has an error from the perfect cosmic north of 0 degrees and 3 minutes. 3 minutes, that's a fraction of 1 degree, that's perfect. The second largest, Khafre or Khafre, 0 degrees, 3 minutes. Mykerinos or Mycenaeus, the third one, 0 degrees, 18 minutes. Bent Pyramid in Dahshur, 0 degrees, 12 minutes. A Red Pyramid, 0 degrees, 5 minutes. I mean, that's genius. In Bosnia, our error, 0 degrees, 0 minutes, and 12 seconds. The most precise ever. Who measured that? The State Institute for Geodesy. We had 3 engineers who came with the total station. They got connected with the satellites, and they got this perfect orientation. So we started discovering element after element. They were telling us how precise and how superior those builders were. And then the next one, we used the scanner to scan what was inside the pyramid using geophysical instruments. We realized there are 7 levels of passageways, and they're laid out like a spiral going to the top. And then the next element, during the archaeological work, we discovered a lot of quartz crystal and white crystal on the pyramid walls and in the tunnels. And as we know, and secondly, they had the ability to transform one form of the energy, in our case, we measure electromagnetic field, to another one through the piezoelectrical field. Hello?
Sorry, I'm back.
And then the next element, under the pyramid, we discovered underground water flow. Water moves, releases negative ions. Negative ions are extremely important for our health. They are very beneficial. And then we've been measuring using air ion counters. These are instruments made in the US. The concentrations are the biggest on the planet because I use those instruments when I go to Egypt, South Africa, Germany, US, other countries. And then the next element, we measure one specific form of the energy called orgone energy. William Reich, 100 years back, he discovered this instrument that measures invisible form of the energy. But since you have the instruments, you can measure. You can scientifically prove. We've discovered that, like in the cities, on the scale from 0 to 100, it's about 10% orgone energy. Villages, 20%. In the tunnels in Bosnia, on the pyramids in Bosnia, 40%. So it seems that the pyramids, they actually generate very beneficial energy. So, Cambell, shortly, it seems that the ancient had very specific goal. why they built this complex. Now, archaeologists, historians, museum curators, geologists, they cannot really help us in explaining what is the purpose of pyramids. We needed real scientists, people with the scientific instruments, physicists, electrical engineers, sound engineers, telecommunication engineers, medical doctors, and they've been coming in the last 15 years. And this is what we concluded. On the top of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, there is an energy beam, which is 28 kilohertz frequency, which is electrical in nature, which is continuous because we measure it in the summer, fall, winter, spring. And it starts at 4.5 meter radius. It expands to 20, coming back to 4.5, 20, 4.5, 20. And as it moves away from the pyramid, it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. In science, this phenomenon is called scalar waves.
Okay.
And the guy who was experimenting with the scalar waves and who was aware of their existence was the genius mind of Nikola Tesla. Tesla, back in 1899, in his lab in Colorado Springs, he was experimenting with this. And the Russian physicists, they've been experimenting in the last 50 years, concluding that the scalar waves move quicker than the speed of light. Or, to be more precise, information within scalar fields move quicker than the speed of light. Our logical conclusion was the first potential purpose of pyramid energy was the communication. So, the pyramids, communication devices.
Wow.
The second purpose, and you did mention that in your first question, you asked me just one question, and look how long I'm talking. So, you mentioned the healing aspect or health. You know, under the Bosnian Valley of Pyramids, 6 pyramids, we have huge network of underground tunnels. So far, we have discovered 6 entrances to those prehistorical tunnels. We cleared about 3.1 kilometers. That's a sensational discovery for itself. But we've noticed when people go to the tunnels, they breathe very well. And indeed, you go inside, oxygen level is excellent, but somehow you breathe better and better as you go deeper. People with respiratory problems, for example, asthma, they breathe so well, they got outside, they don't need inhalators, those air pumps no more. People with the high blood pressure, after one visit, it got normalized. People with the high sugar in the blood, you know, the sugar drops for 5, 6, 10 points. People with all kinds of pains, very often pains are gone. So people started talking about this. And people with the very serious diseases, tumors and so on, they come for a week, for 10 days. They go inside for 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, next day, and so on. They could see the revolutionary improvement of their health condition. And even though we always say, we are not in a healing business, we don't give medical guarantees, but what we do, we film, we record those healing testimonials. And we have hundreds of them. So what's happening inside the tunnels? Obviously, the next purpose of the pyramid energy is to protect what is the most valuable to us, and that would be our health. And you see, Cambell, how now it becomes rather logical. Instead of pyramids being tombs for one dead body, now we have communication, long distances, we have health, and as you will see later, water and food and so on. So, you know, we've been measuring, trying to explain what's happening inside the tunnels. Combination of 9 elements, very brief. The first 5 is the absence of all harmful radiations. For example, you and I, we live on the surface of the planet. It's nice, it's romantic, but a lot of radiation coming from the cosmos. Some of them are harmful, and they attack our body. Our body cells fight those, you know, harmful radiations. In the tunnels, 40 meters below the ground, no harmful radiations. In the tunnels, no natural radioactivity. What do we use to measure radioactivity? Geiger-Miller counters. We measure, the values are tens of times lower than the minimum allowed. No radioactivity, no enemies for our bodies, no geopathogenic radiations, no signal for the mobile phones, no
Yeah, I was going to
signal
ask
for the
it. Okay.
Wi-Fi. So absence of all harmful radiation. So what's happening inside? You get inside for the first time in your life, your body does not have enemies. So body cells can start doing their real job, and their job is to fix the problems, to start the regeneration process. Somebody has the high blood pressure, somebody has sugar, somebody has tumor, somebody has mental problems, regeneration process. And when you add 4 more elements that we measure, the best frequency of electromagnetic field, 28 kilohertz, the best frequency of ultrasound, 28 kilohertz, the best very low frequency, 7.83 hertz. In science, it's called original Schumann resonance. And finally, number 9, high concentration of negative ions, like in my home, in the offices, frequency, concentrations are very low, 20, 30, 50. You go outside, it's fresher, 100 negative ions per cubic centimeter. You go to the mountains, 1,000. You go to Bosnian pyramid tunnels, between 20,000 and 200,000 negative ions per cubic centimeter, the highest on the planet. So imagine you combine those 9, energy features.
Good number.
You are having the safest and the healthiest place on the planet.
Wow.
And very shortly, before you ask me your second question, and be careful with your question, you see how long answers, it improves molecular structure of the water. The water has a beautiful hexagonal structure exposed to pyramid energy. It's structural water. It's high vibrating water. Number 4, food. Number 5, immunity. Number 6, auric field getting improved. Number 7, chakras, 7 of them. Coming back to the balance, they're opening up. Number 8, they clear the atmosphere. So, in conclusion, the pyramid energy and the Bosnian pyramids and the oldest and the original pyramids were used to improve our daily life, literally everything. So that's a revolutionary thinking. And that's one of the reasons why many archaeologists don't like me, why sites like Wikipedia, even National Geographic, even, Encyclopedia Britannica, they don't like me. They consider this project pseudo-archaeological. However, this is the most exciting project in the world of archaeology and the most open project because of all the volunteers, no secrets, no secrets. So I would say that I'm very proud to run this beautiful project.
Yeah. I mean, and yeah, we're all very glad you got in and did it as well, because obviously, I'm sure it wasn't easy. So I'm guessing that's the most, what's the word, like the most studied pyramid at the moment. Like, have you?
It
Because
is.
we all know about Dr.
It is. Yes.
Zahawi or whatever, and yeah.
Yes, Dr. Zahi. The problem with other pyramid sites, they are exclusively archaeological projects. They want, by finding pieces of ceramics and primitive tools, to explain monumental Egyptian pyramids. It doesn't work that way. It has to be interdisciplinary scientific approach. You have to have, besides classical sciences like archaeology, Egyptology, geology, biology, and so on, you have to have high-tech methods. You have to have geophysical methods. You have to have engineers at the site. You have to have physicists at the site, medical doctors to see if there are any, medical features. Once you have such different, open-minded approach, then you can realize what is the purpose of Egyptian pyramids or Mexican pyramids or Chinese pyramids or Peruvian and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, those archaeologists, they jealously guard those sites. And that's the reason why they will never figure out the true purpose of their pyramids.
Well, they can't admit that there was high tech in the past. That seems to be their big thing, that they just can't do that, can they? That everyone has to be primitive. You know, it needed to be 10,000 people working for 20 years, all for the pharaoh or for God or whatever. But then they can't explain why it's, totally, centered on North, and why and how they built it, and it's just crazy, isn't it? Like, what are your thoughts? Why do you think that archaeology is so protective of the information getting out?
You are absolutely right. I mean, you have such wonderful structures, pyramids, megalithic sites, and they are saying 10,000 or 30,000 years back, six, 7,000 Neolithic man was trying to do. They falsified the dates. For example, for Egyptian pyramids, they are saying 4,500 years. Those pyramids were built Ice Age 12,000 years back. The oldest Mexican pyramids, more than 12,000 years. Peruvian, Chinese, even Chinese archaeologists in 1967 who found some clay tablets at the site with hieroglyphic writings, he said they were 12,500 years old. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, they are saying 11,600, but Dr. Klaus Schmidt, before he passed away, he told me 15 to 18,000. Machu Picchu, the first phase, more than 50,000. I mentioned Gunung Padang, 28,500. They don't want to change the narrative, which is telling us in Paleolithic times, until 12,000 years back, they were all primitive, societies. There were no civilizations and so on and so forth. They are saying everything started with the Sumerians 5,000-6,000 years back. It's wrong. I mean, this is just the last phase in humanity, but not only in humanity. So if they admit that those pyramids are 12,000, 15,000, 55,000, they will need to change the history books and what they've been telling us. And like you said, they're telling us before we were primitive, today we are the most technologically advanced. I would say so. We are reaching our peaks, but in the last 100,000 years, there were at least 5 civilizational cycluses, 5 of them. So history of humanity is not evolution, but cycle after cycle after cycle. So in order to justify Egyptian pyramids, they are saying 100,000 slaves were building them. What slaves? Even if we agree with the date, 4,500 years back, there are not 100,000 people total in Egypt, not to mention 100,000 slaves. How can slave move? The biggest block in Khafre pyramid is 220 tons. It's made from granite, from Aswan. Aswan is 69 kilometers to the south from Giza Plateau. How did they move 220 tons? When Japanese tried to make a replica of the whole trip, they cut a block of 2 tons in Aswan, 2 tons of granite. They built the replica of a wooden boat, like it was shown on the hieroglyphic symbols, yep. And the boat sank 2 tons. So such a kind of boat, they could carry up to 1 ton. But how to explain 220 tons? No explanations. How did they, mount them so perfectly? No binding material between them. And they've been there for thousands of years, despite all the earthquakes and so on. So no real explanation. The only one is the most superior civilizations. They don't want to admit that. And if you had more superior civilization, what else did they know? What they know about our bodies, what they know about our souls, what they know about us being, our souls living forever. If people realize that we have such abilities to travel, to live, our soul living forever, and so on, then we would realize that we don't need to be afraid of death, of our body being physically dead. If our soul lives almost forever, no place for fear. No place for fear of losing the job, no place for fear of losing material stuff, no place of losing the loved ones. We become free. And if we become free, you and I and all these individuals around us, then the politicians and the elites, they will lose their ground.
Yeah.
They won't be able to control us. They won't be able to manipulate with us. So you see how the history is actually a big danger for them. And I remember 25 years when the first anthropological, genetical experiment started, you know, by the independent institutions in 1990s, we realized that the same haplogroup was in Europe, Basques, 55,000 years, Northern Africa, Berbers, some tribes in Amazon, South America, and descendants of Mayans in Central America. So they are all 4 continents. What was missing? Something in the middle, distribution center, Atlantis. So now through genetical experiments, we realize, hey, it had to be that lost continents of Atlantis. And then the same haplogroup in India and Ecuador, meaning people were tens of thousands of years sailing between Asia and South America. So the idea that through the Bering, Strait, people came 10,000 years back, wrong. Tens of thousands of years people were traveling. Now everything is changing. So what happened back in early 2000s? National Geographic, funded by Westinghouse, owned by Rockefeller, they took over all this anthropological genetics and explaining us migrations. They are telling us, no, forget tens of thousands of years. It was just 6,000-7,000 years, blah, blah, blah. So you see how everything becomes politics. It's not science anymore. And I've been, facing that for years now. They don't care about science. They don't care about, we've done 28 dating, 28 radiocarbon dating, uranium thorium analysis. They don't care about that. They're saying it's impossible. This guy, Sam Osmanagich, he's pseudo-archaeologist, don't listen to him. But the truth will resurface sooner or later.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing about like all the technologies you mentioned from the Bosnian pyramid, that's all the stuff they make money off, right? Like that's the medical industry, the communications, and all this stuff that if we found out we didn't need their cures for, then they lose all their power. So it's very interesting that, I mean, all they're doing is hiding our power, right? That we don't need them. That's really what they're hiding. Do you think they know? Like, what are your thoughts on these, elite type people?
Of course they know.
They know
of
the
course
whole
they know. Cambell, you mentioned 2 major industries, energy and health. When it comes to energy, again, our genius mind of Nikola Tesla, who was born just a couple of 100 kilometers from here to the west, he had such a noble goals. He wanted to give to the world clean energy, unlimited energy, and free energy. When he was doing experiments with his Wardenclyffe Tower in the state of New York back in 1899, 1900, and so on, he was financed by the billionaire J.P. Morgan.
Yeah.
And then after a few experiments, he was writing in his diary, I found a way to transport unlimited quantities of energy, thousands of horsepowers, between 2 planets, regardless of their distance. So basically, he found a way to transport the energy for free. He went to JP Morgan and he said, hey, listen, we have free energy transportation. We have free energy. And JP Morgan told him, well, how am I going to make money out of that? So he stopped financing him. And instead, what you have in the last 150 years, you have dirty industry, not clean, dirty, coal, oil, gas, nuclear, which contaminates, from Chernobyl to Fukushima and back. That contaminates our planet. They are limited and they are very expensive. And this is how they can make money. And this is how you have elites. So 3,000 super billionaires, they owe more than 95% of the resources on this planet. Imagine that you have free energy. You would change everything. With free energy, no more oil, gas, no more dirty industries, no more, those big tankers, no more refineries, no more petrochemical industry, no more plastic, no more auto industry as we have it today, No more, pharmaceutical industry, no more additives for our food and water that poison our food and water. Everything changes. The social organization would become, fair.
Yeah.
Of course, they don't want that. And when you take pharma, in last 100 and so many years, they were using, what they could not use in the oil and gas industry, and they developed pharmaceutical industry, and they're in charge of medical faculties and hospitals, and they're saying the only scientific way is through the pharmaceutical product, which, by the way, they don't heal the cause, they simply cover the consequences. You had temperature, you take the pills, and your temperature dropped, but it did not heal the cause of that. So, unfortunately, so many wrong things. And what's right, plants, stuff like that, it's illegal now in European Union. You cannot use plant-based product. You cannot use organic seeds. You cannot use. It's a shame. I mean, we come, from this nature. We should be using natural product. I'm not saying we should not have hospitals. You need to have first aid. You break the bone, you need to have, hospital. But we need to combine what's good and beneficial for us.
Yeah, and working on staying healthy rather than fixing disease. And it's interesting that, I mean, they love to flip things, don't they? They tell us all these pyramids are about death when they're actually about the opposite, right? They're about life. and of course,
Exactly. I mean, excellent conclusion. Why would somebody use millions of tons of materials, use elements of sacred geometry, use perfect orientation, use this for one dead body? Does not make sense. But once you realize that they built such a huge complexes to serve the community, to last thousands of years, it all makes sense.
it does, it does. And of course, with all the energy, all the dirty energy they bring in, now they're blaming us for it, right? Now the world's about
Exactly.
to implode. It's all our fault, right? That's
So
when
it's our fault. It's our fault that we have the cows and whatever producing CO2. I mean, what are you talking about? But it's really another fight for the power. Because if you have a cow, you have a few, animals, you can produce the food, you have your eggs, you have your little plants, you have your little vegetables, you have your little fruits, then, self-contained, you have your freedom.
Yep.
Once they take that away from you, you lose the freedom.
And we've seen that, with in the last couple of years with all, shortages in food and that, and everyone relying on shops, and then they have to go without because they can't supply their own. I mean, so that they have done a fairly good job. They've got us in a bit of a corner. So if these were communication devices, if we just go off that one, what do you think was going on? Like we're talking what 20,000 years sort of plus back. Do you think that
30,000, actually, yeah, it's 3,000, radiocarbon dating 29,200. Well, that's a good question. Who did they communicate with?
Yeah.
Well, we have measured the orientation of this energy beam. At first, we thought it is like 90 degrees to the sky, but it is not. In the morning, this energy beam is moved a little bit to the east. And guess what? Our sun shows at east in the morning. At the noontime, 12 o'clock, this energy beam is oriented mostly to the south. And our sun is exactly south at the noontime. In the afternoon, energy beam southwest, in the evening, west. And that's exactly the path of our sun. What does that mean? Does it mean that this energy beam or our planet is communicating with the sun? Maybe. Does it mean that they use the sun as the cosmic gate to communicate with other solar systems? Maybe. And other galaxies? Maybe. It has to be proven, of course.
Yes.
But then pyramids are emitter or transmitter. But at the same time, the pyramids are antennas. They receive the information. So the movement of the information is two-way.
Yeah.
So we have two-way communication. And is it possible that we have some sort of the cosmic internet? It is possible. Copyright. If it is possible, does it mean that you had some cosmic civilizations in the distant past, tens of thousands of years, maybe millions of years back, going from one star system to another, establishing this type of communication? Well, it is possible. So I would say that we really deal with the very developed civilizations, very developed technology. You know, when it comes to the sun is, of course, the major cosmic body in our solar system. Sun gives us the light. Sun gives us the warmth. It gives us life. But it seems that it also gives us information. You know how the last couple of decades, very popular movement was sun gazing.
Yes,
People
yes.
were watching at the sun just before the sunset or early in the morning when it was not so strong. And
Right.
really, you can watch it for a minute or a couple of minutes with no damage to your eyes. And I started doing that. And when you watch it, I mean, you feel such a pleasant vibration. You have some, very special feeling. And then I remembered that in some cases, especially of the Mayan civilization, they did not consider the sun the god and they were giving him sacrification, they were sacrificed bodies. No, no, nothing like that. They considered the sun father and they considered that they were receiving information from the sun. Before I could not understand that. But the more I think, I think that the Mayans knew something that we don't. What kind of information? You know, there are some spiritual people talking about Akashic field, Akashic records, that there is like a energy field around our planet, around the cosmic bodies, where all the information about the past and the present and the future are stored. Is it possible? I think it is possible. How is it possible that some people can see the past or they can see the future? Not many people, but people with the gifts. And it is, it can be verified. So I think there is something there. But by keeping us in dark, by keeping us limited to only our five physical senses, I think they don't enable us to explore other possibilities, the world of spirituality, not the religious world, but spirituality. That we have maybe some spiritual senses. Some people are saying we have 30 spiritual senses. We can feel the energy, we can travel through time, teleportation, a spiritual sense. We can communicate with the thoughts, telepathy, spiritual sense. We can see the energies. Probably we can. We have huge potentials, but we don't use them, and we don't have nobody to teach us that.
Mm.
And is it possible that even the pyramid energy could enable us to develop our spiritual senses? I think it is possible.
That's yeah, I agree. Totally. I mean, that's the first thing, when we go to school, right? They teach us our imagination. Get rid of your imagination, just sit and just repeat back to us what we want you to say. Um,
Exactly.
with the Pyramid of the Sun, was that named because it tracks the sun? Is that how it got its name? Like the
You
Bosnian?
know, when I came to the town of Isoko back in 2005, I climbed the top of the pyramid and I could see geometry, I could see the perfect orientation. Across the valley, there was another, they call it hill because it was covered by trees, but I could see also triangular faces, I could see the flat top and perfect orientation of the sides. And what came to my mind was when pyramids come in pairs in Central and South America, they call them pyramids of the sun and the moon. And I was thinking, well, if I give that the same name, it'll be just one of the hundreds of pyramids of the sun. I said,
Yeah.
let's put it Bosnian pyramid of the sun. There will be only one pyramid by such name. But then 6 months down the road, I realized why I named it the Bosnian pyramid of the sun and the moon across the valley. We were tracking the shadow of the Bosnian pyramid of the sun. that shadow is, of course, triangular because of the pyramid shape. And as our sun moves on the horizon, the shadow moves in the Valley of Pyramids. And during the summertime, just before the sunset, the shadow completely covers the moon pyramid, and top of the shadow touching the top of the moon pyramid. So there is this relationship, astronomical relationship between the Bosnian pyramid of the sun and the Bosnian pyramid of the moon, astronomical feature. And then later on, many spiritual people started coming to our sites, and they would climb the top of the sun pyramid, and they would come to me. They said, wow, it's very strong energy. This is the male energy. This is the sun energy. Well, I was not so much into, spirituality at that time, but I was listening to all those people, male energy. They would go to the moon pyramid. They were saying, oh, it's such a soft energy. It's a female energy. It's about emotions. It's about, empathy and so on. But then when I was analyzing, my experience, the first year when I started excavation, that was on the Sun Pyramid, which is the biggest pyramid. At that time, all the world media were coming to the site. CNN came, we were breaking news for a couple of days. ABC, CBS, all from States, BBC from UK, ZDF from Germany and so on. I felt I was on the top of the world, with all this media attention, and this pyramid was like giving me this male energy, it is about self-confidence, it is about the strength, it's about the power. But then the Bosnian cultural establishment, archaeologists, geologists, and so on, what they did through the National Commission for the Monument, they proclaimed that the pyramid is protective zone, and I could not work there anymore because on the very top of the pyramid there was a medieval fortress, and they said because of that medieval fortress we don't want you to do any more digging. So I had to stop. I went to the moon pyramid, and then we started discovering beautiful terraces, pavements, and so on. And I was working there for a couple of years, but the atmosphere, the energy was different. It was it was not so strong like before. It was not so powerful. It was like a female energy, emotions, stuff like that. So after I was analyzing, my experience in those years, I realized, well, yes, I mean, it perfectly matched what they were telling me with the male and the female energy and the differences between them. But also I realized if you want to be perfectly balanced, you have to have both energies in yourself, male and female. Otherwise, if one energy prevails, for example, if male energy prevails, then it is not only about the power, it's about the control, it's about the manipulation. It has to be influenced by the female energy. And then living in balance, then you have proper, psychological and all other features.
Yeah, nice.
But that's the reason why I named them the Sun and the Moon Pyramid, even without knowing why I was naming them.
That's the
Probably
thing.
that was in my blood that really gave the proper names.
You knew it, yeah, because they're called the Sun and the Moon pyramids all over, like you said, all over the world.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, do you know, like just say for like Central America, and there's a sun pyramid at Teotihuacan, I think, is there?
Yes.
Was that named by the natives, or like was that an old name, or was that a new name?
Well, it's a really new name. It came from the last couple of 100 years. The major pyramid city in Mexico is called Teotihuacan.
Yeah.
It is about an hour and a half drive from the capital city of Mexico City. And 150 years back, they started excavation. At that time, the Sun Pyramid, they call it Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan, and they have Pyramid of the Moon and Pyramid of Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl is a serpent.
Oh, it's a serpent.
So,
okay, and the dragon.
Yes, so they started their excavation 150 years back. At that time, the pyramids were completely covered by soil, vegetation, forest, like in Bosnia. Why? Because there is a lot of rain. It's a different climate. In Egypt, it's a desert, sunny, no rain, no greenery. Peru, desert. But China, Bosnia, Mexico, Guatemala, a lot of rain. So our pyramids were covered by soil and vegetation. So they started uncovering, they exposed this beautiful pyramid, 74 meters high, Pyramid of the Sun. They exposed 400 smaller pyramidal structures. It's a huge city. At one time, that was the biggest city in the world. But you see, when I mentioned the height, 74 meters, the Great Pyramid of Egypt is exactly 2 times higher. The length of the side in Egypt, 231 meters. Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico, 231 meters. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid has number pi, 3.14 incorporated. How do we know? You add 2 lengths, 231 plus 231, 462 meters divided by height, 147, the result, 3.14. In Mexican pyramid, square root of number pi. In Egypt, 3 major pyramids at the Giza Plateau, Cheops, Khafre, Myceren. In Mexico, 3 major pyramids, Sun, Moon, Quetzalcoatl, and their layout is exactly the same. They're telling us in schools there were no communication thousands of years back between the continents. And here we can see the signature of the same architect. Cambell, everything they teach us about the history in schools is wrong.
Yeah, I like to say it's his story. It's not our story.
It's his story, history, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Wow, that's yeah. Give me yeah. Wow. Okay, this is really cool. So like with all that information that they're all different heights and they've got different equations put into them. Do you think that it was working also as like some kind of grid circuit, like were they all connected like to work together and that's why they were all like different components almost of a grid?
Definitely. What I've learned through my research around the world is that the biggest pyramids, the most superior pyramids, are at the same time the oldest. It doesn't make sense. They teach us in schools before we are primitive, we started building smaller pyramids and bigger as technology grew. Wrong. In Egypt, 28 major stone pyramids at the Giza Plateau, Dahshur, Hawara, Saqqara, and so on. They are built from limestone and granite. And they are the oldest. Those that they came later in the 12th dynasty, 18th dynasty, they were built from the mud bricks. Mud brick is even today very primitive construction material. In China, 20 biggest pyramids in Shanxi province, built from sandstone and granite. Those that they came later, 230 of them, they were built 2,300 years ago from Emperor Qin to 1,000 before present. Again, built from the mud bricks, inferior material. Does not fit what they teach us in schools. The same thing goes for Mexican pyramids, the oldest, more than 12,000 years, and so on. In Bosnia, 29,200 years. So obviously, there was no evolution when it comes to the pyramid buildings. The knowledge has been brought to us. Was it brought to our planet? Or is it possible that tens of thousands of years, all of a sudden, people developed in a very short period of time, they had access to some information in the spiritual world, anything's possible, or were some spiritual entities in other dimensions building them? I don't know. But what I do know is that the oldest pyramids are the biggest, the most superior, and they have all the features like Bosnian pyramids. Geometry, orientation, quartz crystal. And even though I haven't done measurement, except for one, Khafre pyramid, it seems that they are all still energetically active. So once you have those energy beams going up, is it possible to kind of catch them somewhere by using some type of satellites or whatever in the atmosphere and accumulate that energy and use them, for example, as protective shield around our planet? Technically, it is possible. Is it possible that once you concentrate so much energy that you can send it to the other parts of this planet using it as the laser beams? It is possible. What do we do with our energy? How we produce the energy in thermal power plants, hydropower plants, nuclear power plants. We store it in those, uh, power plants, and then we distributed this energy through our, whatever, cables to homes, to industry, to produce, distribute. Is it possible that somebody was producing using pyramids and distributing it in the past? Technically, it's possible.
Wow.
So, even though I don't have proof that, we find some place where this energy was stored or accumulated, what I'm saying, it is possible when you have huge quantities of energy.
It's very interesting. And so that'll lead into this question. So you mentioned Nikola Tesla grew
Yes.
up not far from the Bosnian pyramid. Do you think where did he get his info? Do you think that had something to do with it, maybe?
Nikola Tesla is a man with over 300 patents. Based on his work, we have electricity as we have it today, radar instrument, lasers, remote control. I mean, the life of this planet would be totally different if it was not for Nikola Tesla. Very often, people could not understand what he was saying because he was living 150 years ahead of his time. And those who understood him, like J.P. Morgan and some billionaires, did not want to apply his patents. Now, Nikola Tesla was born in the little village of Smiljan in Lika in today's Croatia. At that time, it was Austria-Hungary, and he was of Serbian origin. And just a few weeks ago, we have a beautiful park here. We purchased a lot of swampy land near the tunnels, 100,000 square meters. We have the most beautiful park, and we inaugurated a statue of Nikola Tesla, Tesla's Square in our park, showing appreciation for this great man. Now, he never mentioned pyramids in his work. However, when he was explaining, he was saying, if we want to understand the universe, we need to view it through the energy, frequency, and vibrations. And that's exactly what we do here in Bosnia, the Bosnian pyramids. Energy, very specific frequencies, and high vibrations of the water, food, and so on and so forth. Secondly, he said, once humanity started investigating spirituality, it will develop in 10 years quicker than in hundreds of years. And that's exactly what we have here. By opening our projects to spiritual people, to spirituality, to spiritual senses, we realize that the pyramid energy influences our pyramid abilities and potentials. And finally, Tesla said, the way he was operating, either in a dream state or daydreaming, he was receiving pictures. He was receiving, kind of movies in his head. And then he was thinking, how to bring it to the operational, practical, pragmatic level, physical level. Does it mean that he was downloading information or that he was in contact with somebody else? Or that somebody else was placing the information into his head? I don't know. He should know probably better. But it tells us about that he realized that there is this source of information. There is this maybe energy field, maybe Akasha, as we mentioned before. And he was just the conduit, but a brilliant conduit. Yeah. So the point is, we have to open ourselves. I don't need to be right about what I'm talking. Maybe I'm 90% wrong. But what if I'm 10% right? Then our established science, our official science, has the problem.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, and I think we're finding that out a lot these days. There's so much talk about frequency and energy, and we've got Dr. Emoto and all this stuff going on.
Yes.
So that's really cool. So one question I have to ask you, of course, I'm in Australia. Have you found any pyramids this way? Because I was up in North Queensland a few months ago, and we saw a lot of mountains that looked suspiciously like pyramids.
The sixth continent. When I was there, one of the sites that I visited was Gympie.
Yeah,
Gympie is
yeah,
almost 2 hours to the north from Brisbane on the east coast. And there was a
yeah,
Gympie pyramid.
yeah.
Gympie pyramid was shaped hill with 4 sides and with the terraces. So obviously anthropogenic work is present. So maybe they shaped the existing natural hill, but unfortunately no digging, so I could not tell if it was built from bottom to the top or if it was shaped hill. But 4 sides, and even though it was covered by vegetation, we could see some geometry, we could see those terraces, and on the top I could see the megaliths. All those megaliths were laying now, but originally I would say that on the top there are several megaliths, and on 4 sides, showing the cardinal points, east, west, north, side, north, south, were also megaliths. So it was very intriguing structure in the past. But then at that time when I was there, it was before Corona, it was I think 4 years back, people started talking that they want to build a highway there. And the Aborigines were complaining, they were saying it was sacred land and so on and so forth. And then I heard, unfortunately, that a year ago,
Yep.
they destroyed Gympie Pyramid, building that bloody highway. And even
Did.
though I was writing about it a few years back, I was writing to the government in Australia, but they did not listen. They simply wanted to destroy the proof that somebody else was there. Of course, when Englishmen came and other Europeans never built pyramids. Aborigines, I doubt that they built pyramids. It was somebody else. Who was it? Hard to say. But then we would need to change the history of Australia, like we need to change the history of Egypt and Sudan and Mauritius and Bosnia and China and Indonesia and America because of pyramids.
Mm.
But the interesting thing that I found in the town, just a few kilometers from there, there is a church there which was built back in the 1870s, and there was a reconstruction done in the 1930s. And you can see it's almost megalithic wall. It is, I think, about 136 meters long. And when I was there, I could see polygonal blocks. You know, when you build something, sometimes people use stones, but they usually, like today, what we do, we have those blocks. They are all the same size, and it's very easy, to construct. Before they were using stones, but they either make square stones or rectangular blocks, all the same size. But here, this wall, they brought the material from different sides. It's very possible that there was a temple somewhere. They brought it there in front of the church. They built the wall. They kind of made the imitation replica of the wall that was there. Some of the blocks would have 6, 8, or even 10 angles, polygonal blocks. And this type of construction is typical for Peru, for Easter Island, for Mexico, for Egypt, for places like we have them in Croatia, some megalithic walls in Bosnia and Montenegro and so on. That's not typical for Aborigines or for Europeans. That was another proof for me that another civilization was there. They did not have maybe monumental building. And then when you add the fact that there are also some hieroglyphic symbolism and even with some artifacts discovered in Australia, probably belonging to some of the pharaohs. Now you get, element after element after element telling you that there were some visitors there, even though these are not monuments like huge Egyptian pyramids or obelisks, but the knowledge was present there. But even more exciting for me were Aborigines and they understand when they say that we are here for more than 1,000 generations. 1,000, if one generation is, of course, 25 years, it's more than 25,000 years. Now we know that Aborigines are present there for about 55, 60,000 years. And according to the legends, they were visited by star people, telling them that even their origin, Aborigines, is not only from Australia, but not from this planet, and that they are able, they have potential to visit their real home. And that's the reason why during the dream state, when our soul has no breaks and leaving the body, and then they can wander in the cosmos. Why the Aborigines were trying first to control the movement of their soul, and secondly, why they were looking so hard for the place of their origination. And it seems that they did find that star system where they originated from. And once you have such potential that you move through the universe with your soul, then it seems to me that then they wouldn't care about their physical body, about the vehicle for the soul. So when the Englishmen came to Australia, the Aborigines, when they're looking at them, technologically inferior, they were naked in 90% of cases. They said, oh, these are primitive Indians, whatever. But their spiritual abilities is something that we should not underestimate, but to learn from them. And it seems to me that we still don't have the true knowledge they have about the universe.
I mean, it's very interesting. We have all these stories, don't we? That civilizations started by people who came in and brought knowledge. It's very interesting, So how that all works, and of course, that's why they need to cover it up, right? I mean, a lot of people talk, about the Earth being, in quarantine and all these things you sort of hear, and if you look at it that way, that the technology is being cut, so we can't communicate. Well, maybe we are. That's it.
Correct.
Yeah. So. Sorry. Now, so obviously you're doing a lot of work on the Bosnian pyramids, and you've got volunteers and things going. So, what can the average person do to sort of get involved and to bring this out? Because obviously we're in this pretty interesting time of human evolution at the moment. Everyone's asking questions and everything, and do things. So yeah, what's the best sort of thing that someone could do to get into this?
Well, we've been having people from 150 countries visited Bosnian pyramids. We are very open and we are very happy when we see people from all continents. We had people from Australia, we had people from New Zealand, and so on and so forth. Even our archaeological manager was from New Zealand. We had a PhD, beautiful lady. She's from Australia. She was working for the Ministry of Interior and so on. So we have people from all over the place. I think the first step, people come and see. Once they see, they will make the conclusions for themselves and they will see how they will get involved. Even if it is one visit, we are very grateful. If they decide to volunteer, that's a great thing. They can come not the same year, but next year. They can bring friends, they can bring family. They come and they volunteer. They're going to have a beautiful experience because at any point during the volunteering season, you have people from 15, 20 countries. You have 50, 60 volunteers, different ages, different experiences. They talk to each other. They're open. They realize they have very similar souls from different parts of the world. I remember when I'm mentioning that volunteer from Australia, she came and then the first day people were discussing where they're coming from. They were introducing themselves. And one guy said, well, I'm from Chile, I'm from US, I'm from Germany, I'm from Jordan. And one guy said, I'm from Pleiades. And this lady from Australia, she was listening, this guy from Chile, this guy from Germany, this guy from Pleiades. And she told me later, I thought Pleiades were probably some Greek islands. But Pleiades are actually the star system of Pleiades, because
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
people are saying, well, I'm coming from this star system. So, it's always fun. And so they come, they visit, that's great. They try to help by talking about this, spread the news, that's great. They write the articles, that's great. They volunteer, that's great. They help us in the case of promotion, financially. We accept everything. That's a beautiful story, no pressure whatsoever. So once people start coming here, I think it's beautiful to see them coming from so far. Like in Australia, we have a lot of Bosnians, but also, we have people coming from Serbia and Croatia and all other, European countries. We are happy to see them over there. We are happy to see the real Australians. So this is what they can do.
Cool.
So I invite them, they come, they join us, and they enjoy what we have here.
Nice. So is there a website that has all this information they can go to? Or?
Yeah, we have our social media. For example, our YouTube channel, Bosnian Pyramids TV. We have our Facebook, Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. We have our Instagram. They are either under my name, Sam Osmanagich, or the same thing goes for the websites. We have several websites, Bosnian Pyramids .com and .ba. We have, our beautiful park, parkravne2.com, parkravne2.com. So we have like 4 or 5 different websites. They can come, they can see information, they can check the volunteering possibilities.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, I'll make sure we put all the links below this. And like I've got a friend called Michelle Gibson, and she's been studying like alignments. So she looks
Yes.
at megalithic, things, pyramids, all these things, and lines them up, like sends the lines out. Have you done any of that kind of work?
Alignments is usually connected to the ley lines, and ley lines are underground energetical lines. The best explored is, of course, southern England, where they realized that most of their megalithic sites are sitting on the same or above the ley lines. For example, uh, Stonehenge, Avery Stone Circle, Glastonbury Tor, Woodhenge, and other very important and major archaeological megalithic sites, but also major cathedrals, churches
Yes.
are sitting on the top of the ley lines. Why? Because they were built on the same place where another megalithic site was built, which was built on the top of the paganic temple, which was built on top of the first, site thousands of years back. Why? Because the first builders, the ancient builders, knew importance of those underground energy lines. So when they built a monument, especially if it is special geometry, if it is spherical, if it is conical, or if it is pyramidal, it amplifies the energy. Now, in the case of the Bosnian pyramids, we got a map of the ley lines in the Balkan region, Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia, Montenegro. And we can see those lines. They usually run straight, north-south, east-west, and diagonal. And the biggest intersection of all these ley lines is the town of Visoko in central Bosnia, where the pyramids were built. So the ancient builders knew our planet, what is underground, better than what we do, or no, than us.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically everything's here already, isn't it? It's Earth
Yes,
energies that we just need to, mimic basically. But of
yes,
course, that doesn't make money, does it? Like we've discussed. So that's kind of why
yes.
we're in this bit of a predicament at the moment. Wow. Well, that's awesome. I mean, I definitely think I'd like to have another chat with you and get into some more of this. I've actually got some friends who study all the scalar wave. They know a lot more about all the scalar waves and all that kind of stuff. So I would
Good.
definitely love to get you on another chat with them and get into sort of more of those things because it's such you know, at the moment, everyone is questioning all these things, aren't they? They're questioning all the systems, especially, you know, things like the medical system, and but that's brought into play everything, and you know, politics, who's running this place, why, and so it's a very you know, this is the information that needs to get out, and like you keep saying, this once it's out, it'll change the world, you know, in a very short amount of time. You know, I always say,
Correct.
look, we already have all the answers. You know, we've just got to, you know, start using them, right? Put them into practice.
That's correct. Absolutely right.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. That was really cool. I'll leave all your links below for anyone who wants to get in contact you, you know, and get over there and do some more work. And I'd definitely love to have you back in the future. So yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. What I'm going to do, I'm going to send you a couple of links now, website and others, so you know you can
All right.
place them in your
Cool.
description.
And obviously, there is something that we might hopefully be mentioning in the next few months. We might be, yeah, doing something where we can help people get over to the pyramid with you. So,
There you go. There you
yeah,
go.
so that's
Yes.
definitely for anyone who's wondering. You know, keep your eyes peeled, and we'll let you know how that goes. But there's definitely a lot of work on, and then that's what we need to do: get people out to these sites to, like you said, to experience
Yes.
them, to go through them,
Yes.
to understand that it's real, and that way, then they can, you know, they can put all the information from books and that it all sort of, you know, it evaporates, right? Once you experience something, you go, oh, well, obviously that's all crap, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again for your time, and yeah, I'll definitely we'll have another chat soon, hopefully.
Okay. Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Campbell.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, man.